Welcome to The Hook with Sarah Larson. I am your host, Sarah Larson, and I'm really excited to introduce my guest today, Amy Blankenship. Amy, would you be so kind as to explain to us what it is that you do?
Sure. Hi,
Yourself.
I'm Amy, and I am located in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. So asking what I do is kind of an interesting question sometimes because, I will tell you I have what I call a quote unquote normal job that I work 9 to 5, or well, 7 to 3. I do work for our local police training academy. So I have a normal job. And then, so the other part of me, I am a yoga teacher, a Reiki master, and human design guide. And yeah, so I kind of embrace my full woo side. That's how I know Sarah. Trying to get my own business started with everything that I enjoy doing. Oh, and I also do dog rescue. So I have to throw the dogs in there too.
Yes, you do. Absolutely.
Yes.
I loved finding that out about you because I am a dog lover, have no children, so
Yeah.
I love the dogs.
No children here, and
yeah.
definitely I have plenty of dogs. I have 5. They're all smaller, so they don't take up too much room in the bed.
That's good. Yeah, we don't do dog in the bed, but then again, we have a husky and she's hot and wiggly
And hairy.
Let's go back. I'm going to start with where I start all my conversations. Where did you grow up? Are you from Pittsburgh originally? What was your childhood like?
Sure. So I am not from Pittsburgh. I've lived here for about 9.5 years, probably. I am from Huntington, West Virginia. So my childhood, I think I would have considered it pretty normal up until probably about 1st or 2nd grade, because I'm just doing some inner child work lately. And like younger me just kind of felt happy. And I'm glad that there was a time in my life that, I was innocent and, felt happy and enjoyed that part of my life.
Yeah.
So probably about, like I said, 1st grade, my parents got divorced, and I lived with my mom, visited my dad some, but a little extra part of my life, my grandparents, my mother's parents, I was very close to them, and so I was there pretty much every day. My mom would work. So, being a single mother, she worked outside the house. We gave my grandparents a dress so that I could go to all the schools that I wanted to go to. And yeah, even all the way through high school, I was always at my grandparents' house. After school, we ate dinner there. They really took care of us because, my mom not really having an education and just kind of taking minimum wage jobs. Money was not flowing very freely back then.
Yeah.
So thankfully we had my grandparents.
That's great. But you guys didn't actually live with your grandparents? You had your own place. Okay.
We did. And for a lot of the time, probably 3rd grade until I was 19, I think, we lived in basically lower income housing. So like a large apartment complex.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah. So we lived there, but always with my grandparents.
Yeah. Oh, I'm glad that you had your grandparents. That's awesome. Where did you go after high school? Did you aim for a college route? Did you do something a little different?
What I thought my life was going to be after high school and now is so different than what I planned. I was very academically focused. My only job through school was to make good grades.
Okay.
And so, yeah, I had huge plans. Somehow I was going to be an astronaut. It was during 3rd grade, the Challenger explosion. That's where I was when that happened. And somehow that made me decide I wanted to be involved in the space industry. So I was
the opposite effect on you as what one might think it would have.
I agree. Yeah.
Okay.
I thought that was funny. So
That maybe gives us some insight into Amy's brain.
I guess let's do the opposite. So I was going to go into engineering, and so in high school, I was taking all the hard classes, chemistry, physics, trig, calculus. So I did, of course, choose which colleges, like was looking at colleges to go to. And I always grew up with the idea, and was kind of, I guess, passed along from my mother and stuff. I can do whatever I want to do. Okay, well then I am somehow going to do this, and I'm going to go to the school that I want to go to. So my first choice was Virginia Tech. You should appreciate that, being in Virginia. And I had a few other colleges that I applied to. And of course, my local college, where I lived, it was Marshall University. So, you just apply to those for fun because you'll be able to get into those.
Yeah.
And so I got into Virginia Tech. I didn't get straight into the engineering program, but like at least into the science so that I could take a few classes and then work my way in. I was super excited thinking that we had all the money situation squared away with loans and any grants and stuff that I could get. And like 2 weeks before school started, the big loan, it was like a Parent Plus loan, I think. It fell through, and it was pretty much the full thing. So I spent the next 2 weeks trying to find money, and it didn't happen. So that was, huge disappointment for me.
Sure.
And it just kind of started this, like not really knowing what I wanted to do anymore. And so I did go to Marshall. And like, I started just kind of stop going to classes and would fail them. And that's not me, It took me like 9 years, probably on and off, to finally get my shit together and graduate with a degree. And I have an English degree.
Well, that's quite a bit different than engineering, isn't it?
Yeah. I can't even remember all the degrees that I switched to in between.
Yeah. That had to have been a huge blow first.
Yeah, it really was.
And to have caused you to then be so disappointed, I guess, is that a good word for it, that you just didn't have the heart to really put the effort into the classes?
Yeah. And I do have a long history of depression. So of course that really set off another, big wave.
Okay.
And
so you were diagnosed with depression earlier than that, prior to that, during childhood?
So of course back then it was not as known of, not as accepted.
Yeah.
So basically, I'm pretty sure it started in about middle school, sometime like 7th grade. And it really was a huge part of my life that nobody knew about. I think I was 19 when I finally sought some help for like maybe, medication or something for depression.
So prior to that, you were not doing anything medically or seeing anyone. You just felt miserable.
Yes. Yeah. It was like wearing a mask everywhere, and pretending to be happy and then going home and being just so tired and just laying down and sleeping for hours.
How did you manage to keep up your grades and have this goal of being an engineer if you were tired all the time?
It's funny, and I'm not 100% sure now. I think certain things were the only thing that got me through. I was also in band, so I had a lot of activities.
Okay.
And I think keeping myself busy was what got me through. So first, I think I saw a therapist or a psychologist that kind of says, okay, here's your questionnaire. yes, you have depression and anxiety, and now we'll send you over to the psychiatrist for medication. And I remember him, he was a pretty older doctor, and he was not very nice. And he made me feel horrible, because he's like, how do you have depression if you made it through high school with good grades, and you were in band and you did this and stuff? How do you have depression?
You couldn't possibly have depression if you did all of that, right?
Exactly. Yeah. He was pretty much telling me that I didn't.
Wow.
So I never saw him again.
Good.
I
Good.
told the therapist I would not go back to him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. So what did you end up doing? Did you go see someone else?
They did. I'm trying to remember. I know I tried a few different medications, and they all had like their side effects.
Right.
So we didn't find one yet. And they always wanted to put me on Prozac. And I was like, no, I will not be on Prozac, because, the stigma around Prozac back then.
Yeah.
I'm like, I will not, I don't want to go on Prozac. And it turns out finally, after a few more years, I was on Prozac.
And that was the one that worked?
It was the one that worked the longest. Like,
Okay.
how medications are, you
Yeah.
have to switch them every now and then. So yeah, I was on Prozac for a while.
Well, I'm glad that you found something that worked. How did you end up paying for college? Was it just you were working to pay for it, or did you have some smaller grants?
Yeah, being in state and it being a state school,
Yeah.
I was able to get grants and loans.
Okay.
It definitely racked up the student loans, because after I finally graduated with my bachelor's, I went straight into a master's, and then straight into another master's.
Wow. So you have 2 master's degrees now?
Yeah.
What are
Yeah.
those in?
One is in environmental science, and the other one is in geography and GIS.
Wow. I don't know anybody who has those degrees. So
Nobody
what
probably
was
does.
so what were the careers that you sort of anticipated with those degrees?
So the environmental science degree, I remember sitting in the Marshall cafeteria eating lunch or something one day, and a lady came around. She was an older lady, and she was talking about something environmental. And I can't remember which one it was, because in West Virginia, of course, the mountaintop mining is a big one for us. So it could have been that. I'm not sure. And then that kind of piqued my interest, and I kind of went down a rabbit hole of environmental. I would still call myself an environmentalist, but not to, the like extreme, I guess.
Yeah.
So, and I had been a vegetarian for ever. Well, since I was, I guess, 16 in high school. And that's also helpful with the environment. So I did that, and I decided, okay, I'll go into this degree. I liked some of the classes. What I found out too late is it was more of a degree that was geared towards working for a large corporation and like running industrial processes and doing environmental science stuff for them and testing. And that's not really what I wanted to do. And I had taken some geography classes, and that was my minor for my undergrad. So I'd already kind of been in that world. And I was like, why didn't I just go do the geography degree? Because that I could teach, but also with environmental issues, and then the GIS that was starting to get really big. I can
What's
find
GIS?
Geographic Information Systems. It's
Okay.
like where you see all the mapping. It's like taking computer data and adding it to a map and displaying and being able to analyze and stuff.
Okay.
So I did my geography master's, and I did like an extra certificate in GIS, which is, so many hours. And then my last year, I got to be a GA, a grad assistant. So I also got to teach. So that kind of started my teaching career. My,
Cool.
getting the teaching bug, going, oh, I like this. I got to teach kind of adjunctly a bit.
So you stayed at the college and continued and taught for a little while after you got your degree as well, or just during that last year?
So during that last year, but then I also, the job that I was getting, I got to teach with that too. So I started working, doing some GIS stuff for like a research institute, and they did transportation stuff. So we digitized a lot of maps and created some databases. So I got to start doing that. And then they needed an assistant for teaching their classes. And I'm like, oh, hello, because that's one of the things I like doing. So I got to start helping. We were teaching GIS classes to the DOT.
Okay.
And that it was, mostly a bunch of men. And their ages ranged anywhere from 20, 30 to 60 or so, and they were funny because especially the older guys, they're like clueless about a computer. So it's like really, really having to kind of come back to the basics and teach them that. I eventually took over as like the lead trainer for that. And what was kind of weird in this position, they were also involved with our local community college. So they created this position because I don't think anyone could, how budgets are. Mm-hmm. So like they ended up creating a position where I worked for the institute half and the community college half. Okay. So made one full-time job. And what was really neat was because they didn't have anyone who taught geography or any of the things that I, was familiar with. I got to come in, teach my own classes, create all my own classes, and make up classes that I wanted to teach. And I loved it. So I would teach, a few classes a semester, and then also do the other training with the DOT. I enjoyed all that so much. And so being involved with that, I kind of got into like the administrative part of higher education. And so I started a doctorate in higher education administration.
Okay.
I think I did about 3 years. So I was getting close to beginning to write a dissertation. One of the deans called me in and just kind of told me that after the semester, I no longer had a job. And it was like another one of those huge blows in my life. All it was budget. That's all they really told me. I didn't take it well. And then eventually, about a month or two later, the other half, the other part of my job, let me go because they didn't want a half-time employee and they didn't want to make me full-time.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So that was a big disruptor. Woo.
And at the same time, I ran out of money for loans. And so I never finished my doctorate.
Were you getting your doctorate covered? You were paying for it with the job? It wasn't covered.
No. I was getting
without
loans.
The job, you wouldn't have money to pay. You can look for another job to pay for things, but that's a huge, huge blow. Then you've invested 3 years of time into a PhD and were doing something that you really loved.
Mm-hmm.
What happened?
The woo side of us would say, I think that was a Saturn return that really hit me hard. In the 30s, my early 30s, mm-hmm. when I was, when I ended up losing my job. And then I had been diagnosed with thyroid cancer about a year or so before that. So I was still kind of coming off of that. Mm-hmm. And then I lost my jobs. And I tried to find a job for a very long time. I was out of work for almost 2 years in West Virginia.
Wow.
And I could not even get a job at like a restaurant or anywhere. And of course, I was putting my education on there, just kind of feeling that it was probably one of those.
Everyone felt that you were overqualified.
Yeah. But then there was nothing available
For anything that was more applicable to your education.
Exactly.
Wow. Can we back up just a minute and talk
Yeah,
about your cancer diagnosis?
Sure.
So you went through treatment? Well, what happened?
So for at least probably a decade at this point, I had already been diagnosed with autoimmune disease and some of the other things that kind of go along with that. I have Sjogren's syndrome. Autoimmune, it's your body is going to attack something of your inside your own body. So with Sjogren's, it is attacking your moisture producing glands. It can affect so much and you don't even think about that. I have extremely dry eyes,
right?
Very dry mouth. You'll see me drinking all the time.
Yeah.
Skin, but it's also your internal organs. Everything is dry, like my GI system.
Dehydrated.
Yeah.
Wow.
So it's really kind of crazy. And then it also acts a little bit like RA, rheumatoid arthritis, lots of chronic pain. I have fibromyalgia thrown in there. I mean, you name it.
Because those things weren't enough.
Exactly. It's just been like basically one battle after the other.
Yeah.
Since, high school or so.
It's such a long struggle where you just can't get ahead, right? Is that how you were feeling? I can't get anywhere because one thing after another just keeps coming.
Yeah. And I just had a normal doctor's appointment in my PCP. I guess she felt something when she was, how they do all the, checking your neck and your glands. I guess she felt something. So she wanted me to have an ultrasound. So I went and had the ultrasound. And the radiologist found this one tumor, and it was like 0.9 of a centimeter. And they typically don't start to do like any biopsies unless it's over 1. But this doctor decided to go ahead and have it biopsied. And if you've ever had a fine needle biopsy, those are not fun. And especially, I have always been very protective of my neck, my throat, and just having this needle jabbed in my throat, it was not a good time. It came back malignant. So the type that I had was papillary. They call it papillary thyroid cancer. What's also interesting is that you were treated by an endocrinologist, not an oncologist, because this type chemo does not work for. So my thyroid has been removed. I have no thyroid.
Wow.
I talked to the ENT surgeon. Sometimes they will go in and just take out one lobe and have it tested to see what type of cancer, if it's anywhere else, and then go back in if they have to. I didn't want 2 surgeries. So I was like, let's just take the full thing. And it turned out to be a good idea because my full thyroid was just little tiny tumors all throughout the entire thing.
Wow.
Yeah, it's so crazy. So that was good. What they do, they use a radioiodine pill. Your thyroid loves iodine, so it'll suck it right up. So after my surgery, and they do a scan to see, you take a little bit of radioiodine, just kind of lights up any residual pieces of your thyroid that might still be in there. And they did see a little bit because you've got vocal cords, you've got your parathyroids and everything. So it's kind of a delicate process. So we did the radioiodine, and I had to go on a no sodium, or I couldn't eat anything that had salt in it because it was iodized salt. So I had to make everything from scratch with non-iodized salt for 3 weeks. So then you take the pill, and hopefully it destroys anything left over, and you have to be isolated for 3 days. I've done all the scans and everything since, and nothing has come back. But the radioiodine pill did actually cause me to have cataracts at age like 33.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's the only reason I have glasses.
All right. So all of this happens, and obviously you have an identity. I mean, this is what I really like to dig into, is just these things that change the perception of ourselves. And the things that I call disruptions are just the things that change the direction or change the way we think about ourselves. Did you have any tools at this point to help you with the depression and, on top of the cancer, and then losing these jobs, losing your access to your PhD? What did you do?
Well, I definitely did not have like the tools or the mindset or anything that I have now. That's but I've gained in the last few years. So it was like accumulative trauma from, I mean, all the way from high school up. It's just been accumulating. And I really went into a really bad depression. My health was not good. I didn't really have access to a doctor anymore because I didn't have insurance. And my car was repossessed. My credit was horrible. It was a rock bottom, definitely.
Yeah.
And my mom, like I said, she always just had very small, like minimum wage jobs. So I was actually kind of helping her with some things, or taking her on a vacation and stuff like that with me. And so now I have nothing and just a little bit of unemployment coming in. I have very strained relationship with family. I was never very close to my dad. I am one of those who I feel like I make my family, even though there's all these people I'm related to. I just don't feel any type of bond with them.
Are your grandparents still around?
No, my grandmother passed away when I was 19. She got to see me graduate high school, but she also had cancer. And passed away. But my grandfather, I'm pretty sure I had cancer already, and he passed away after that. So he lived to be like 89, 90, I think. So yeah, I didn't even have, I didn't have them. And family drama ensued. Even though I'd always had a very strained relationship with my mother, what I would say now, she's very dysregulated, her nervous system, very dysregulated. She was one person around everybody else and another person around me. I would get the blunt of all of her stress, a lot of emotional trauma and stuff from my mother. Even though I still trusted her, like, even as messed up and as stressed, as our relationship is. But this almost 2 year gap that I was, out of work and just going through a really hard time, my uncle and her kind of devised a plan to get me out of the house. They said that we all had to move, and I forget the exact plan, but like basically I had to be gone by this date. And we had also, in between all this time, I started doing rescue. So we had lots of dogs also. I had become friends with one of the rescue people up here in Pittsburgh who created a beagle rescue. And so I was sending them dogs from our local shelter. Somehow I became really good friends with Julie. She knew all this was going on. And when the time came that I had to be gone, she came down, moved me to Pittsburgh. And I had nothing, no money, nothing. And then it turned out that all of that was a lie just to get me out of the house. It's been 9.5 years, and I have a very strained relationship with my mother over that. Like I said, she was the only person, relative wise, that I could trust. I thought that I could trust.
Amy, you had the rug really pulled out from under you. But here's the interesting thing that I have found in all of these podcast episodes and all the people that I have talked to, is that there is always at least one person. There's always at least one connection, one human connection that kind of pulls us out of that darkest spot.
Yeah.
So what happened when Julie came to get you and moved you to Pittsburgh?
She rented a U-Haul. We put whatever I was taking with me in it. All of my dogs had to be split up. That was a very hard thing for me.
Sure.
A few stayed with my mom. And then we brought 5, and 2 of those went to a foster friend of ours, or of Julie's, Jan and her husband. They were great. So 2 of my dogs went to Jan's, and then I took 3 with me. I have since, of course, gained a few more dogs.
Yes, I remember the count was 5 when we started here.
We did rehome one of the ones that were with my mother to another rescue because he was young and just a little bit too much for her.
Mm-hmm.
But she does still have my beagle, and well, I guess it's more of her beagle now. And another one of our dogs. And then the 2 that went with Jan, they lived happy lives, and they both have passed in the past year.
Wow.
So I had tons of guilt over leaving my dogs anywhere. So that was one of the hardest things for me. Yeah.
Babies, I get it.
Yeah. Yeah. But I think I've finally kind of, come to a good place. Yeah, they were happy. So
that's good to know that they're happy and that you made the best decision that you could for them at the time, right?
Yeah, it was a really hard time. So I had no other choice.
I'm learning so much about you. What did you do when you arrived in Pittsburgh? Were you able to find a job?
So yeah, fairly quickly. And it's always good when people know other people. That's kind of seems like how I get most of my jobs. I started out at a Petco in the grooming salon.
Okay.
Because yes, because Julie knew the manager at that time. So I spent some time working in the salon with the doggies. I did a Starbucks stint for like a month. And that location was horrible. And I was like, nope, I still visit Starbucks daily almost. And but I don't hold it against them. I met one of the owners of ITEEK. They used to have a distribution center, and I worked in the distribution center. I worked there for 2.5 years or so. It wasn't like my dream job or anything like that. But it was just enough to get some money, right? They got purchased or merged, and they were basically getting rid of the distribution center. So that day, I had just found out that I got another job for the city of Pittsburgh. And that's when he told us he had to let us all go. And he was really worried about me. He used to be one of the founders of No Dog Left Behind. He had a plane. So him and his friend created this nonprofit where they help transport animals, rescue animals. So that's how I met him, because he flew dogs in from West Virginia and stuff for us. So then I moved on to the city of Pittsburgh, which is where I'm at now.
Okay.
It's really funny because my best friend, Julie, who brought me to Pittsburgh, she is a police lieutenant. I took the civil service test for like administrative clerical type position. And somehow out of all the places, I end up with the police. And I worked for one of the zones for a short time until the training academy needed somebody. So I moved over to the training academy, and that's where I've been ever since. And it's funny that I ended up working for the same place that she works, just by accident.
I know that you are a certified yoga instructor, and we know human design and Reiki. How did you get into that world? Was this after you had started with the police?
Yeah. So I was always a little woo, on and off throughout my life. It's just funny. As one thing that my best friend said to me one day, because she's always wanted to be a cop. She never wanted to be anything else.
Okay.
And she's like, why don't you want to do anything normal? I'm like, I don't know, but that's just not me, apparently.
Yeah.
So I started kind of going back to yoga, doing yoga. I had wanted to on and off, thought about doing a training, but I wasn't sure if I was going to, mostly because I've always been a larger person. Always been in a larger body, except for one short period of time when I lost 100 pounds and then gained it back right before cancer, or right around cancer. But so I had to find a place that I felt comfortable and that they actually would welcome me in. And I did. I found that in a studio called 1.1 Yoga here in Pittsburgh. I started my training in January. And then somehow, and I didn't even know what it was, I kept seeing the words Reiki floating around. And I'm like, what is that? And I learned a little bit about it, and I was like, okay, cool, I'll do some training. So I started my Reiki training also. And for anyone that doesn't know about Reiki, it is a form of energy healing. So again, staying with my woo, my woo topic. So I started both of those. And of course we had COVID hit, and my poor yoga training, everyone had to pivot. We had to go online when we got a few months in, and then we had to stop and figure everything out. And then at least we got to come back together towards the last month or two. And because of COVID, I didn't really start teaching right away. So I was a little bit scared of teaching. Yeah. And I was really drawn to yin and restorative yoga because of what my body was wanting at this point. I didn't want the power yoga, the hot power yoga anymore. With the chronic pain, I learned how yin and restorative, how it really helped. So I knew I wanted to teach that. And so I did some extra training in that later on. And then, of course, we all meet Allison Cullen of You Do Woo, probably about the same time in 2022. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you and I did we just figure this out? We took the same course, right?
Mm-hmm.
Was it the Feminine Art of Getting Rich with Allison at the same time?
Yeah, exactly.
But didn't meet until months later. But
I know. I had heard of human design and had already known a little bit about it. But with Allison, we learned so much about human design. And then I'm like, okay, I want to learn that now too, because that is me. I am just a constant learner. I want to learn everything. I did some human design training this past year, and I've done several different types of Reiki training, and have become a Reiki master. And I am finally going to teach my first class in just a few days.
And I'm really excited because I'm going to be one of your students.
I know. That's awesome.
I'm really excited to learn about it. I love the idea of being able to move energy in a very different way.
Yeah, we've learned just everything is energy. I feel like
Yes.
energetics has become just like it's at the forefront now of everything. We hear
It
it all
is.
the time.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
that, well, it's part of this new paradigm, right? The world is becoming more aware of energetics and the quantum field and how we are all connected. It's so interesting. I would probably guess, since I've known you, that you're probably still working through this identity change. But do you feel like you have more of the tools to heal all of this trauma that you have experienced?
Yeah. I mean, of course there's days, but
An
overall,
ongoing journey, right?
yes, it's definitely an ongoing journey. Yoga really helped because a big part of yoga is acceptance. They call it non-ahimsa. Ahimsa means harming, and not loving yourself. It would be a big part of ahimsa. It was one day in yoga that it just kind of hit me. So there are all these tools, and it's awesome when I am doing a Reiki session on somebody and it helps them. I am what they call clairsentient, meaning I feel things. And it's made sense because I can now go back to like high school and be like, oh, yeah, I was picking up on their energy. I will pick up on people's energy and I can kind of tell them, I'm picking up this, or your throat chakra it's blocked today, or, just different things. And they'll be like, oh yeah, unfortunately, I do feel people's sadness, especially in their heart. People are, they're very anxious. They're very sad. I very rarely feel happy.
I was going to ask, do you feel like it's something that you are perhaps more sensitive to because of your own experiences? Are you soaking up too much of other people's energy?
I don't think so.
Okay.
At least now I'm able to release it.
Perhaps when you were younger, you were soaking up other people's energy, but you didn't realize it wasn't your own.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now I'm definitely more aware, and yeah, I'll know definitely like that is coming from you and not me. Or it's so crazy now because of like in the house, it's like you can feel energy shifts, and it's like, okay, who is anxious? It's like, what's going on?
That's interesting.
Yeah. And even the dogs.
Really, you can feel their energy shifts as well.
Yeah, definitely. And we have an epileptic coonhound and a very anxious dachshund pit bull mix. So they both enjoy their Reiki.
I love that part of it too. And I have a husky who's getting older, and I like the idea of maybe being able to understand where she's at.
Hopefully she will enjoy the Reiki when you are able to, because animals are very sensitive to energy. So and what I've learned is sometimes if they don't want you touching them, then you can come, you can bring it out a little bit.
Okay.
Or even from afar, you can test, of course you can try it out. There's a couple here that they know I'm doing it and they come over. Oh, they're like, hello, can I join? Some don't care, some love it.
Huskies are very independent, but I hope she will be interested. Amy, where can people find you on the internet?
The best place is always going to be Instagram. And my Instagram handle is Amy in Alignment.
Okay. We'll make sure that everybody can find you there. Thank you so much for coming today and having a chat with me and being so open about all the trauma that you've been through and letting us see a glimpse into how you have come through it. Thank you for sharing that.
Well, you're welcome. Thanks for having me. I've always hoped that parts of my story, somebody else will be able to recognize themselves in it. And maybe it will help them too.
Absolutely. Thank you.